The moment you come up with an idea that whomever's going to be in that particular piece of content goes, I can associate with that. I can really feel the warmth around that. I can really put all of my energy into it because I totally buy into it. You see a different side of people, and you see a side of people that, you can't force. You can't script that. Sometimes it just has to be.
Very happy to welcome Drew Crisp. He's the Senior Vice President of Digital at Liverpool FC. Drew, welcome to the podcast.
Great to talk to you. Nice to talk, Sean.
Not a problem. What I always do is I always try to find out how people got to the position where they are, how they got into sports. How did you get your way into sports? So what was sort of your background and your journey?
I think a little bit of fortune, if I'm honest. And it's definitely fortune. So I kind of grew up in the world of consulting, sort of management, IT, technology, strategy consulting. I kind of started to progress into customer experience, mobile development, and then the sort of world of fan experience. Through that work was how I got to know current chief exec here at the club. And as they were going through a digital transformation, kind of this opportunity arose in terms of how to take the club to the next level. And so 4.5 years ago, we had a conversation, and here I am. So yeah, it was an expected part of the journey. Sorry.
But similar to me, coming from a geek background to a certain degree, I was a long-time coder developer in the IT space before starting Sports Geek. So you had 15 years at both Unisys and then IBM in a variety of roles in that IT and consulting space. So when did you start, I guess, looking at the world of, as we know it, as digital content and digital transformation and sort of where a lot of sports have moved over the past 15 years?
So I think, roughly, I guess probably about 8 years ago, digital transformation kind of as a concept really started. So that's when IBM started, its kind of agency part of the consulting practice. That's when I got heavily involved when I was a partner at IBM and an exec. And that's when I started to run the kind of agency part for some of the industries within Europe. And that's how I then got into the digital experience side of things, the digital transformation, very much about design thinking, and actually in the earlier, sort of in those early stages in IBM, that's where mobile apps became a much bigger thing, particularly in an enterprise world. So I did a lot of work there as well. So yeah, that's probably where it started for me, and that's how we then got connected with Liverpool.
And so your role, SVP of Digital is different for different parts of the world and different definitions. What's the definition of your role? What's the remit? What are the things that you look after?
Yeah, digital is an all-encompassing thing now, isn't it? And it does mean very different things to very different people. So in my world, it's pretty straightforward in that there are 3 parts to our digital business. There is our media business. So that is everything that we do in terms of content, the content that we put across our own OTT, the content that gets picked up on our linear TV feed from international distributors, and also sits on Sky and Virgin here in the UK. And the media team also look after all of our social channels. So that's the 12 actually, maybe different social platforms that we exist on, and the hundreds of millions of followers that we have. The second pillar is our marketing pillar. So that sits within digital, kind of does what it says on the tin. But it also is our, kind of insight, intelligence, and marketing operations function. And then the third part is what we call product and proposition. So that's all of our fan-facing products. So it looks after memberships, plus all of our website, plus all our apps. It supports our e-com platform capability. And then, a couple of years ago, we decided to fold the rest of kind of the IT business into that. So all of the infrastructure and tech operation. So all of that is what we encompass as digital.
Okay. Well, that is a wide remit. Did it look like that when you came in, or did you go through a bit of a digital transformation process to get to that place?
Yeah, no, organizationally, we went through a bit of a transformation. So when I joined, I had the media part, I had marketing part, although it's changed slightly in the last few years, and the sort of digital transformation program, because we had a program of work, just like many other organizations do. And so as that evolved and as we kind of grew and developed what we have and where we kind of come from over the last 4 years, that's why, that's how it's evolved into where it is today.
I have spoken to a lot of teams that have, that data analytics, marketing function and that content pillar, media pillar, very separate and can sometimes, be competing, but not really working hand in hand. Is it really important for you to have have those teams both reporting into you, but cross-functionally supporting one another?
Oh, massively. I actually think one of the biggest changes that we've seen is probably more from a people and operational thing, as well as kind of some of the tech stack that we've been doing. And so having a marketing function that is absolutely intertwined with what we do from a media content reach perspective and supporting all of our product development is critical. So, and I think having them all aligned to a kind of common, this is where we're headed, this is how we're going to kind of grow our fan base, both top of the funnel social area as well as kind of middle bottom of the funnel from an engagement conversion perspective. You can't do that, particularly in the sports industry, unless those three are absolutely, in sync. One fuels the other. And I think that's a really big kind of change from an operational process, people, values, strategy.
And then you were talking about there, effectively a funnel. Liverpool is a global beast with, many platforms, millions of fans. Where do you put your focus, like from a marketing effort, and then funneling that to the content that you're producing?
Yeah, I think that's the challenge with all big sports entities. You can try and be all things to all people, but when you've got a global fan base the size and scale that we have, it's almost impossible. And at the same time as wanting to do the right thing by the fans, we've got all of our commercial partners to consider as well. And one of the reasons that they're our commercial partners is because of the scale of our audience reach and all of our digital capability. I've been really clear, I think, probably easy for me to say, I guess the team would verify that, but I think I've been reasonably clear in that the two important aspects of that funnel, so to speak, are the fan base overall at the top of the funnel, because without them, we don't exist at the global scale that we do. So number one is kind of how we're making sure we're giving content and experiences to the fans that we want to give. And I think the second part that's important is then what I call that middle of the funnel kind of engagement piece. So getting fans to actually engage in our products on our platforms, because that's where we really start to create that kind of one-to-one connection with them and really understand them. Those two things are the priority, right? Ultimately, if it results in some sort of transaction, that's obviously brilliant, but we've got to get those first two parts right. And actually, that's how we thank fans, frankly, for being fans, because they are hugely, hugely important to us.
And is that pretty much that top end of the funnel, all your social media, all your digital, sort of putting out that, what I call digital face paint, so a fan can say, hey, I'm a Liverpool fan, but then bringing them more into your ecosystem, whether it be into your CRM, what does an email comms look like? Hey, we want you to use our app. We want you to be reading things on our site. Is that pretty much the goal of, your team, to sort of bring them into that second stage?
Yeah. I mean, we want to, let's give them the most amazing, compelling content that we possibly can across the platforms that they want to be in. And I don't think it's for us to determine that. We just need to be where the fans are and actually then give them a reason to come to our site, to see that, and actually look at how we do that through things like our rewards platform, look at how we do that through our match center, how we make sure the mobile app gives them up-to-date information, give them the best experience from a retail journey point of view, and actually make it easy for them to actually kind of navigate all of the different properties that we have. So yeah, that is 100% the objective, and ultimately kind of we fuel the fans and the fans fuel us, for a slightly crass analogy, but that is kind of a reality.
It is a balancing act, because I've seen teams over the years, go and reach fans on the platforms as they open up their gates and let you collect fans effectively. But then you do want to get them to your site. And so then you have where do we put this piece of premium content? Do we put it behind our own paywall or our own virtual wall? Or do we keep talking to the fans? How do you manage that balance? Because you want to make it super compelling to get to your platforms, but all of the big numbers are over on the YouTubes and Facebooks and that of the world.
I think it's just it's a forever balancing act, and there's never really an obvious right or wrong. I think also some of it varies based on different markets. So actually what fans expect in certain international markets might be different from what fans expect in a UK market. So we need an ability to kind of tailor as well. On the whole, if we think that we've got content that is pretty much mainstream content, it's probably match related, it's probably stuff that's in multiple channels, we'll always put it on the social channels in order to gain the engagement. If it's a unique piece of maybe longer form documentary style or an episodic podcast, for example, then we would put that on our platforms, and then we decide whether or not are we putting it on our platforms free because there's a good reason to, or actually because we think it's premium enough that we'd like a fan to register with us to consume it. Like I say, there's no right or wrong. We test it all the time. Did that piece of content work free more than it did reg? Did it, did actually that piece of content feel so premium that it was worthy of putting it behind the reg wall? So yeah, it's an ongoing challenge.
And so then the other part of the equation, you talked about what is in your remit, and you've sort of touched on the commercial partners, is how do you serve and work with the commercial team again, because that's like the other spinning plate you have, like, oh, we've got our fans on all these platforms, and then how can we engage authentically with your partners? What does that process look like for you when working with the commercial team?
Yeah, so I mean, we're kind of a big family in that sense from a commercial team perspective here in the club. So the media and the marketing teams are, working alongside the partnership management team all of the time. We also know that we have to balance the actual social platforms themselves and all the algorithms that they have. So we are always working to kind of, a certain ratio of what's kind of core club content versus what is partner-based content, so that we can absolutely optimize how much our partners kind of are getting exposed to that fan base. And that's not always easy. It's different on a, frankly, it's different across a YouTube versus Twitter versus or X, versus a Facebook. So we're forever sort of challenging that ratio. The other thing that we do with partners, though, is we're very committed to doing authentic and what we would term branded content with them. The moment we make it authentic and the moment it's branded and the moment it's telling a rich story around us as a club, the more cut through it gets for our partners, rather than if we just slap a badge on it, it's not going to work or have the same impact. And so that's something else that we work very hard at.
And is that something that it's a combination of your commercial team, your team, bringing the creative nous, the platform knowledge back to the partner to say, yes, we could do that logo slap, or we could do the idea that your agency has pitched, right? But this is these are some of the cool ideas our team wants to do that sort of fit with a partner that's looking for some of those objectives. Is that sort of working relationship you've got with your commercial team and your partners?
Yeah, completely right. And we have to do it that way, because whilst we understand our football fans and we understand Liverpool, we don't necessarily understand our partners. And actually the partnership manager and our partnership team are there to make sure that actually we understand their business objective. What are they trying to achieve through something? And we balance that with what we believe will work from a kind of a fan engagement, creative storytelling. And, no one ever always gets it right. But the more that you have that dialogue and the more that you make sure there's a purpose behind a piece of content, a piece of branding content, or there's a purpose behind a particular fan experience, or more broadly, there's a purpose behind a major campaign that a partner wants to run, the easier it is to come up with something that's real. And so that is one thing that doesn't necessarily even have to be us all the time that creates it either, but we work quite closely with a number of our partners' agencies to get that right. And, that is a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of back and forth. We think this would work, that wouldn't work. Use this player, don't use that, put it this way, all of those things.
I mean, one I wanted to ask you about was Dear Liverpool, like as a campaign, working with a partner. Tell us a little bit about that campaign and sort of what it delivered.
Dear Liverpool, I think it probably started about the time I was joining, about 4.5 years ago. And actually its success is probably highlighted by how long it's been going. It was an idea that the team came up with Nivea, to think about how it showed a level of empathy with fans that maybe weren't as fortunate as others, and actually identified opportunities to give fans, a once in a lifetime experience where they were having a tough time. And actually, therefore, kind of that Nivea caring aspect of what sits in and around their products was actually kind of the line and the link with actually how do we show care for some fans that, as I say, aren't as fortunate. And so we ran a number of different stories and a number of different kind of surprise things that some of the big team players, the big players on the men's team, would go and surprise a fan based on an unexpected event. And so it kind of snowballed after the first couple, because ultimately it was an emotional storytelling piece of content. And of course, actually, that resonates with a lot of people. There's a lot of reality behind it. There's a lot of authenticity behind it. There's a lot of fact in terms of, players want to support fans and they want to give some of those kind of opportunities back to communities. So yeah, and like I say, it's been running for probably 4 or 5 years now, and is hugely successful. It's a piece of content that runs and always gets huge engagement, which we absolutely love.
It definitely seems a trend that I've been seeing sort of year on year, this wholesome content trend to sort of rail against some of the toxicity and some of the bad parts of the internet that we know exists, to present that, the fan gets feeling warm and nice. It's a great experience for the player, and again, if you're doing it year on year, it must be good to be going to the players and say, hey, we're doing this campaign again, and they're putting their hand up because they've had a positive experience as well.
That is the other key. Yeah, I absolutely agree. The moment you come up with an idea that whomever's going to be in that particular piece of content goes, I can associate with that, I can really feel the warmth around that, I can really put all of my energy into it because I totally buy into it. You see a different side of people, and you see a side of people that, you can't force, you can't script that. Sometimes it just has to be. And I think, like I say, all of the, we're very fortunate in that, our players on the men's and women's side want to do these things and they really enjoy doing these things. So sometimes the more creative it is, the better.
Yeah. And the other one, some of the strength of Liverpool is the strength of your partners and their long tenure. And, in your previous role, in, working on agency side and understanding like their journey in sports sponsorship and how they talk to their customers has completely changed, from 20, 30 years ago. And if we look at Carlsberg, who you recently re-signed, have been with the club for over 30 years, like their requirements and their deliverables from a digital point of view would have been like every time there's a renewal, every time there's a new discussion, the conversation would have gone, one, we want more digital. It's more trackable. Yeah. It's something we can measure, all of those things. How is like that, I guess, the increased dependence or increased desire for more digital and content, I guess, change with like a long-term partner like Carlsberg?
I mean, we are beyond excited, to be honest with you, that we've had a partner for that long, and because it's unheard of. It's a record breaker for the Premier League, and it's a record in the club's history. Before I answer the bit about what's changed, there's one thing that I think is really important that hasn't changed, and so regardless of whether we talk about physical rights, physical assets, or digital rights, digital assets, the one thing that hasn't changed is kind of and I don't want this to sound corny or trite or anything, but the organisation, what they're trying to achieve and how they want to operate as a business and how they're run is very, very aligned with how we are run, how we want to be seen in the market. And actually, it's kind of that alignment and meeting of minds that has allowed us to have and enjoy such a long partnership. And that's really important to us. If you don't have that, it kind of doesn't matter how many different assets you try and put into an agreement, never quite works as well as it could. And that's a fundamentally important point for us. But notwithstanding that, it's massively changed. I mean, even in the 4.5 years I've been here, it's changed. Yeah. I didn't really understand what was in marketing rights in this sports organisation before I really joined. And you've seen a completely different side of it. I mean, frankly, COVID accelerated some of that as well. We had more digital rights needed. So, we've ended up in a position where, you're right. The physical access is important. The hospitality is important. The LED is important. But actually, as we talked about before, the need for digital has grown. I think the evolution in the last 4.5 years is historically it was go back to that funnel, top of the funnel. Let's get brand reach. Let's get brand awareness. We just need to get our kind of selves known. Now, most partners that we talk to and most properties want, yes, of course, they want that brand reach, but they really want to get into the engagement. They really want to kind of create a different sort of relationship with, in our terms of fan base, in their terms of customer base. And so that's that. How do we then drive them into our property to have a meaningful engagement, to maybe even get redirected to a partner's website, understand their product offerings. So, and that's why we're kind of evolving our digital estate all the time. But and that's changed, as I say, even in my time.
And that's the importance again of that data analytics pillar for you to be able to go, well, if all of the agencies and all of our partners are now leveling up and skilling up in measuring their sponsorships and how they're working and what's performing well. And so it's been effective for you to, one, build up your capacity there, but also to go on that same learning journey with your partner as they're, I guess, leveling up and realizing, this social campaign is doing different, is performing better to a signage campaign or an activation, around the stadium.
Yeah, massively. I mean, it's fair to say we spent the last 3.5, 4 years on our plumbing, so to speak. And as I've kind of always said, if we can't see it, we can't measure it. And if we can't measure it, we've got no idea whether it's done any good. And if it has not done any good, how on earth can we call it, effective marketing? So, the balance for us, I sort of describe it as, my job is almost to balance art and science. And actually, in marketing terms, I think what we're really doing is balancing brand marketing with performance marketing. We are a massive brand platform. People partner with us because of our brand reach, our brand performance. But ultimately, that is underpinned by performance marketing. So if we can reach an audience in Australia, but we understand whether that's worked with the audience in Australia, well, actually means that we can make decisions. And that's our job. And that's, I think, part of the love I have for this job is we get to balance that art and science every day.
So you talked a little bit about that digital plumbing and part of your, role to sort of get that digital plumbing and that infrastructure in place to be able to report that and to have a better understanding of that picture. I'm always talking with people on, they're on their CRM journey or they're building out that infrastructure. It's not as sexy as, hey, this platform over here's got millions and millions of fans. How do you, I guess, communicate that the tree up to the board level to say, this is why we need this infrastructure. This is, this is our foundation. This is our playbook. How did you go about that? And I guess constantly fighting that fight because the tool sets and the things that you require keep changing.
It's only ever an ongoing dialogue. I think the challenge, certainly from a digital standpoint, is you can't quite touch and feel it in the same way you can, for example, in a construction project. So if you are building something, you can see when the wall goes up, you can see when the bathroom goes in, you can see when the windows are there, and so everyone goes, oh, it's progress. In a digital world, it's never quite that easy. I think one of the things if I go back to the measure it, we can't measure it. We can never describe its value, right? So actually, if we are really going to deliver on commitments of engagement and conversion and click-through rate and impressions and all of that less sexy stuff, we've got to be able to measure it. So actually, I can't put a value on it unless we can measure it, and therefore working out a return of investment is quite hard because we've got to be able to value it in the first place. So really, it's kind of it's an ongoing. We've got to make sure that we own our own destiny, and part of owning our own destiny is owning our own data, and that means we have to invest in understanding our fans. If we understand them, we can serve them better, and that's been kind of, I guess, the mantra for the last 3.5, 4 years. The reality now is we can see an awful lot. We've now got to deliver a bunch of kind of products on top of it to then actually kind of further enhance the experience. But yeah, it's never an easy conversation. I completely agree with you. I'm not sure I've ever got it right, to be honest with you. I don't, and I think most people struggle with it. But we've done a lot of work to understand the values of fans from different perspectives, not just in monetary terms.
I mean, and do you, like you sort of talked about that mantra of measuring and understanding, is that something like, if you're there still working on that problem and still trying to convey that problem, is it something you're trying to get your team to always be having that thought, whether it's something as simple as I'm doing some micro content or a post, it's like, why am I doing this post? Who am I trying to reach? Like trying to get your digital team and your content creators sort of out of the minutiae of just the platform and the algorithm and pulling the levers to go, what, why am I doing this and how is this connected to the bigger piece?
So one of the constant conversations is, what is the purpose of it? Whether it's a bit of content, whether it's a feature in a product, whether it's a piece of paid marketing, what is the purpose behind it? Because if everyone says what's the purpose, they'll immediately go, I think maybe I should change it, or actually I don't need to do it that way, or maybe I could do it quicker. So it's kind of there's a constant dialogue, that I'm trying to kind of make sure is in all of ours, mine included as well, because we always, you say, get sucked into, well, that's a new fancy thing, let's do it. Hang on a second. Has it got a reason for doing it? Because if we're just putting a bit of content out there for the sake of it, well, I'd rather not do that. So I think there's a constant question of, does it have a purpose? Now, sometimes that purpose could be, actually, it's a very hot topic, it's an important message, and we just need to get it out there. That's fine. That could be a purpose. The other purpose could be, we want to drive conversion of fans into this product, right? But have that in your mind. One other thing that I am maniacally focused on is, I hate this sense of kind of the once and done thing. I don't want to just do something because it's a cool thing to do or it's a trend. Like, if it's a trend, but it isn't going to last for a multitude of reasons, industry reasons, commercial reasons, market reasons, and let's not do it. Like, it's fine. We don't have to jump on it just because it's a trend. And actually, if it's not going to stand the test of time in our world, then we shouldn't feel hostage to do it. So that's the other kind of constant, we don't have to jump on something just for the sake of it.
Most definitely. Drew, most listeners sort of working across digital technologies are always looking to solve problems, whether it's around new platforms, what tools and workflows that your team is facing, and, always looking for efficiencies. Is there one thing over the last 12 months that you're, happy that there's maybe a green tick against it because it was something that you were trying to solve?
There's probably a multitude of them. That sounds that sounds really arrogant, doesn't it? Not saying we've solved everything, by the way, but we've come a long way. I think I actually go back to what I was saying before. I think one of the biggest successes we've had, just as a kind of a function, if you like, and therefore as a business, is kind of making sure we've glued together the sense of content fuels product fuels engagement. That only works if we've got the right marketing across all of those kind of points of the traditional funnel. And so actually joining that together so that we've kind of got alignment, and again, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but having alignment across those three key areas is absolutely fundamental to how we support our partnerships team, how we support our retail team, how we support growth of our commercial business. So actually, I think from an organizational, operational, and underlying kind of technology capability, that's the biggest win we've had. And I think that stands us in really, really, really strong position for kind of going forward as well, because we kind of got bedrock there that we can build on that's really, really firm. And that was so important to me and ultimately the business.
You talked a little bit before about assessing trends and deciding, trying to like run a bit of a decision matrix over them to say, is it something we should be tackling? Is it a trend worth following? And, it's been a while since we've said, hey, here's a new platform, should it be a platform we tackle? Meta's come come out with Threads. It sort of started with a bit of a bang because it had the Instagram user base. So we weren't all starting from zero, but it's still really in its infancy as of recording now. Like I think they came out with hashtags last week. How do you go about exploring a new platform like that for Liverpool?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think something like Threads, given its backing from Meta, we're in a bit of a test and learn phase with it. We, as you've said there, have benefited because of the Instagram piece and therefore kind of people jumping on it. Our approach is very much, we're not going to create anything bespoke just for Threads. How do we leverage a lot of the work we already do across social platforms and use Threads in a similar way to understand, is it getting the engagement? Where's the biggest reach? Actually, is it driving different types of engagement and commentary? Certain content formats working on it differently? And WhatsApp communities for us is another example where actually we've been in that. It's performed really well, particularly when it comes to redirecting traffic, more so than other social platforms. So that starts to inform, when are we doing kind of broadcast versus when are we doing calls to action style of content. And so, yeah, we look at that all the time. And Threads is another one where, yeah, we're trying it out. Just like a few years ago, we started with Line, and that was based on, a Japanese following. And actually, is that a platform that we want to, go a bit bigger on? And we're doing very well on that too. So, we're always trying to look for the new ones, but with caution. Like, we're not just going to suddenly go all in. We try and be tailored.
But it's also, you want to get that data. Like, and again, I think it was only 3 weeks ago, Threads started telling people that the traffic was coming from Threads and not Instagram. So it's like, the water was muddy to know, is it working? Is it, faux engagement, or can you actually drive traffic? Like, that will be, a real test for Threads. If publishers then realize, oh, hang on, I can put on a news article up here and people go through to my site, that might be why more publishers, do the shift and lift off X and move over to Threads, because that's where traffic might be. And it's sort of a wait and see, balance engagement and traffic to see how valuable the platform is.
Yeah, definitely. And what time of the day you want to post things, and actually which location, because can you geo-target? I mean, and the other thing, I mean, this is very geeky, but you want to get the right tagging in some of these things, to your point, so you can understand where the traffic's coming from. So if we don't make that right, then actually all the data we've got in terms of traffic that we see coming into our world from social, we can't see it in the right way. Again, you don't measure it in the right ways. So there's a lot of work in the background that goes into some of that kind of finer detail.
And it is funny how the workflow changes with a new platform. We've always been posting with this platform or with this tool, and then you've got to go back and be fully native or just posting from a phone and all of those things that you've got to reinvent your whole workflows around it.
Yeah, well, you're just consistently changing, and I do think the other mantra is like, there's only the only constant we have is change, particularly in this world, and so actually we've always. And it frustrates the team sometimes because they just get into a groove and then they got to change again. But that's the world we live in, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Most definitely, it is the thing that people working in digital, and like we said before, the commercial partnerships, like to be able to adapt to that change and sort of help people get on their journey. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast.